What's going on, guys? It's your average consumer, and the AirPods 3 are finally here. This is the third generation of AirPods. Today, we're gonna be going over everything you need to know, what Apple changed, what they've added, what new features it has, all that good stuff. But first, let's talk about what you get inside of the box. And this is Apple, guys, so it's a pretty standard unboxing experience. Once you pop it open, you'll of course be greeted by some paperwork. You got your quick start guide, warranty information, all that stuff you're probably not going to read. But once you get past that, you get those AirPods in hand, but not so quick. Underneath that, you've got your charging cable. It's Lightning to USB Type-C, but we're done with the boring stuff. Let's take a look at the AirPods themselves. And as you can see right off the bat, this case is very, very similar to that of the AirPods Pro. They've got an almost identical design, and once you pop the case...
Thanks to Aura for sponsoring a portion of this video.
John, please. I don't like it when we fight.
Listen, I know this is cliched, but it's not you, it's me. You're still good at, some things.
Please listen.
But this just does more for me right now.
John.
Sorry, it's how I feel.
I've changed. I can be better used. With an external monitor.
I feel the divide between you and I, like the distance between us.
Fine. One more chance.
Thank you. You won't regret this. I love you.
So my, let's call it relationship with the iPad has been complicated. I think when it first came out, like everybody, I'm like, that's a big phone. I don't need that. And then when they forked the OS and got iPad OS, I'm like, this is it. This is finally the path to make the iPad be a PC replacement. And then iPad OS.
Open, you'll see that the AirPods inside almost look exactly like the AirPods Pro. Of course though, there are no in-ear tips. So for those of you folks who don't like to have those tips in their ears, these are gonna be the experience you're looking for. But now let's take a closer look at them to see if they're legit. So here they are, you guys, the redesigned AirPods. This is the third generation. The second generation pretty much looked exactly the same as the first, but they had a couple of new features, wireless charging case, that kind of stuff. But this is a completely new design. They have a lot of the features that we saw with the AirPods Pro. So if you like the idea of the AirPods Pro, but you didn't like those little ear tips, these are definitely for you. You get a lot of those cool features that the AirPods Pro offer, but now in a design that works better for you. Now, what's actually different with these compared to the previous version, right? Well, first off, the stem is a lot shorter now, 33% shorter to be exact. So they took about a third off of it. And this makes it a little bit more low key, just like with the AirPods Pro. So that's a good thing. You don't have that long stem if you weren't a fan of it. I think a lot of people got over time.
It's just a giant phone OS with a different name. But now that Apple's taken the wraps off iPad OS 16 this year's WWDC, I am more excited about the iPad than I have ever been, as we're finally starting to see it transition to its full potential. It's like you can see it like you're looking at your kid finally do that thing you knew they could always do. But is it finally there? Or are we still waiting for the M2 iPad Pro to finally take us to that next level? So, big caveat here. iPad OS 16 is not out to general public yet as of the making of this video. And I do think I need to bring up and talk about the new changes that are coming to iPad OS with iPad OS 16, and ultimately how that's going to affect this particular M1 iPad Pro. So when it comes to the iPad, at least to me, it's always been the story of software not living up to just the baller hardware that is there. But with iPad OS 16, it sort of makes me look at how I interact with it very differently. And sort of how I've interacted with the M1 iPad Pro this entire year has been more.
But either way, it is now shorter. But with this new stem, since it is similar to the AirPods Pro, you also have that force sensor. So now this force sensor, when you want to control your music, all you have to do is give the stem a little squeeze. You can squeeze it to play double tap or double squeeze to move forward a track, triple tap, triple squeeze to go back, and you know the controls by now. Now this is a cool addition because the previous versions you had to double tap, and that was like the only real option you had in terms of controls. You could go into the settings and change what that double tap did, but this, you don't need to do all that. You've got all the controls with that force sensor. And of course you can activate Siri by either holding down the force sensor or even just saying, "Hey Siri." Now let's talk about this design. I'm one of those people who really relied on the AirPods Pro having those in-ear tips because it made it a lot easier for the AirPods to stay in my ears. I don't know about you guys, but I was of the camp with the original AirPods where they wouldn't sit in my ear well. I've got some funky ears. As you guys can see, the part of my ear that would hold the AirPods in.
More or less same as I use every other iPad. Didn't matter really what processor was in it. I use it to answer emails and write emails. I write scripts and notes on it and videos and FaceTime with friends and family. But primarily it's a media consumption device. That's mostly what I'm using it for. I'm laying in bed watching Obi-Wan or The Boys, whatever else I want to watch on YouTube to kind of wind down at the end of the day. And while it's been amazing for all of those things, it's never really been what I think it always wanted to be, what Apple tried to make it be, more of a computer. So Apple announced Stage Manager, which gives sort of a little more of a traditional Mac OS feel. And so they also added more support for external monitors. Although even just the idea of like docking an iPad to a monitor still seems just internally weird to me. But I do think that we're finally getting much closer to the software living up to the hardware. And because of the fact that there's an M1 chip inside of this thing, it's nuts. The iPad was never slow the year before, and it wasn't slow the year before that, but Apple keeps upgrading the internals, at least making me believe to let us do more with it. And I kind of feel like they're finally starting to take positive steps towards that. Previous years, it was just like speed for speed's sake. The iPad never seemed slow, but now it's 80 times faster, and you're like, okay, Twitter
kind of goes downward, whereas Carl has like the perfect ear for AirPods.
Made for it.
As you can see, his goes upward, so it's got that little area right here that it just holds it perfectly. So AirPods Pro, personally, that's what I had to rely on. I need to use in-ear buds, but for the most part, if you've got those nice ears, those perfect ears, then you'll be all right.
I feel like I should hold this down because I do have the perfect ears, you know?
Carl, you a sneaky one. Now, obviously, everybody's ear shape is gonna be different, right? But thankfully, the AirPods has this pretty cool feature called adaptive EQ. These actually have a built-in microphone that is essentially there to listen to what you're listening to. So it picks up the audio the way your ears are picking up the audio. And with that adaptive EQ, it will automatically that these can possibly produce. Did that make sense, Carl? You get that? So Carl just told me that was a lot of information. So basically the dummy version, the average consumer version, like what I'm supposed to be doing, is that these will automatically hear what you're hearing and make sure you're getting the best audio quality that these can produce.
See? You're with me, because you lost me last time.
You keep me on my toes, Carl. You keep
launches fast on it, or YouTube launches quickly, or Obi-Wan looks great, but it would have done the exact same stuff on a 2-year-old iPad Pro. And listen, even with the rumors of this M2 iPad Pro coming, MagSafe charging, glass back, whatever else they do, sort of the upgrades they're going to flash in front of you at the keynote, there's nothing that this M1 iPad Pro won't be able to do to run from iPadOS 16 that the M2 iPad Pro will be able to do, just from a software standpoint. Especially if you're taking iPadOS 16 out of the equation right now, because technically it's not out yet. What we have with iPadOS 15. The M1 iPad Pro, as it stands right now, is almost too powerful for its own good. But that's not to say it's perfect, even if we're adding in iPadOS 16 to the conversation. All right, so that's the future. But since the M1 iPad Pro came, in all honesty, I have noticed almost no difference from the previous generation iPad Pro on how I use it. Everything I do works just the same. I'm not that impressed that when I'm on a FaceTime call and I move, the camera moves with me. It's fine. I don't generally think about it. I'm also not using my iPad as a replacement for a PC. Sort of things like Files app and sort of a lot of apps that